I want to show you something that almost nobody outside of a certain circle has ever seen. It happened at Rosa Parks' funeral, and it changed the way I think about what it means to honor the people your work is actually for. I'm Martin Ricard, founder of Community Symbol, and if you've been with us the last couple of weeks, you know we've been in the thick of it. We've talked about the Heritage Foundation CEO who wrote his dissertation on slavery. We've also talked about the fake ICE tip line and the guy who called to report someone for looking at his girlfriend at Walmart. These are some heavy topics, and it's important to bring some perspective to these challenges, especially because in America we just celebrated our 250th anniversary. But today I want to do something a little different because one of the things I talk about a lot with the organizations we work with is this. Social impact marketing is not just about fighting back. It's not just about crisis communications and developing all these counter narratives and figuring out how to protect yourself from people who want to use your messaging against you. It's also about honoring the people you serve, telling stories that make your community feel seen, using your platform, however big or small it is, to say, you matter, your culture matters, your language matters, your life matters. And I haven't seen anyone do that better than Reverend Charles Adams at Rosa Parks' funeral. Now, if you haven't seen this clip, I want you to go find it after you watch this. It's not hard to find, but it's also not something that went viral the way it should have. It lived mostly within certain Black church circles and certain civil rights communities. Here's what happens. Reverend Charles Adams, pastor, civil rights giant, one of the most powerful preachers of his generation, is at the pulpit at Rosa Parks' funeral in 2005. And instead of just delivering a eulogy, he does something I've never seen anyone do before or since in that setting. He starts saying thank you in different languages, not as a gimmick or like a performance, as an act of recognition. First, he's giving thanks to God for blessing this world with someone like Rosa Parks, but he's also acknowledging that Rosa Parks' courage, the simple world-changing act of staying in that seat, didn't just belong to Black America. It belonged to everyone who had ever been told to sit down, move back, or stay in their place. Every language he speaks is a different community saying, we see what she did, and it changed us too. By the time he's done, people are on their feet because not only did they feel the same way about God, but they also felt, maybe even for the first time, that someone at that podium was talking directly to them. That's what it looks like to honor community in your storytelling. Not just talking about people, talking to them, with them, for them.
Crown him Lord of Lords. I wish I had 10,000 tongues just to thank you. If I were Chinese, I'd say oh dear. If I were Danish, I'd say mangatat. If I were Italian, I'd say grazia. If I were Hebrew, I'd say toda raba. If I were Greek, I would say Eucharisto. If I were Japanese, I'd say domo arigato. If I were Portuguese, I'd say obrigado. If I were Spanish, I'd say muchas gracias. If I were German, I'd say danke schön. If I were French, I'd say merci beaucoup. If I were Russian, I'd say spasiba. If I were Kenyan, I'd say ashanta. If I were Nigerian, I'd say eje pupu. If I were Zulu, I'd say ingia bonga. If I were Sutu, I'd say keyaliboha. If I were deaf, I'd say, but since I am who I am, and I've got what I got, and I feel what I feel, I'll just say thank you, praise your name, amen.
That clip brought me right back to a moment I witnessed years ago, one I've thought about ever since. I was working with one of my clients, Courageous Conversation. If you don't know them, they're one of the leading organizations in the country doing racial equity transformation work, helping institutions, school districts, corporations actually do the hard internal work of confronting race and bias. Every year, they'd hold these summits, bringing people together from all over the country to get equipped with the latest tools and to just be a community with each other. People who were doing this work in places where, it wasn't always welcome. They needed that. We all needed that. One year, they brought in members of their team from New Zealand. And during one of the sessions, the New Zealand team got a moment to introduce themselves, to share what it was like to lead racial equity work in their country and how their culture honored that work. And then one of them did something nobody in that room was expecting. They called the CEO of Courageous Conversation, the man who built this work, who had given years of his life to it, who had taken it around the world up to that stage. And the team member was carrying a cloak. Now, this wasn't just an ordinary piece of clothing. A cloak in Maori culture is one of the most prestigious, most sacred garments you can receive. It's not decoration, it's a statement. It says, "We see you, we honor what you carry, and we want you to know that what you're doing matters beyond the borders of the country you're standing in." The New Zealand team member explained the symbolism, and then slowly, deliberately, he draped that cloak over the CEO's shoulders. I was in that room, and I'm telling you, there wasn't a dry eye there. Because what that moment did was exactly what Reverend Adams did at that pulpit. It said thank you in a way that no speech could have said it. It used culture, specific, rooted, meaningful culture, to honor someone's contribution in a way that landed in the spirit, not just in the mind. That's the kind of storytelling I'm talking about. Here's what I want you to sit with today. Most organizations in the social impact space are really good at talking about their communities. They've got the impact numbers, the program descriptions, the before and after stories, and that stuff matters. But there's a difference between talking about your community and actually honoring them in the way you communicate. Honoring them means using their language, literally, sometimes the way Reverend Adams did. It means celebrating their culture in your content, not just mentioning it. It means making the people you serve feel like the heroes of your story, not the subjects of it. Not the problem to be solved, the power to be recognized. And here's why this matters strategically, not just spiritually. The organizations that do this, the ones that make their community feel genuinely seen in their communications, those are the organizations that build the kind of loyalty and trust that no crisis can shake, that no fake tip line can threaten, that no co-opted language can undermine. Because when your community knows you see them, really see them, they will show up for you every single time. 3 things I want to leave with you today. 1, look at your last 5 pieces of content. Does your community actually appear in them? Their voices, their words, their culture, or are you just talking about the issues that affect them? There's a difference between we serve the Latino community and actually centering that community's voice, language, and story in how you show up. Which one are you doing? 2, find your thank you in different languages moment. What is the gesture, the specific culturally rooted act that would make the people you serve feel genuinely honored? It doesn't have to be a speech at a funeral or a ceremonial cloak. It could be as simple as making sure your content is in the languages your community actually speaks, or featuring their stories in their own words instead of translating them through your lens. Find that moment, build it in. 3, let joy and celebration be part of your communication strategy, not just an afterthought. Too many organizations in this space lead with pain, with urgency, with crisis. And yes, sometimes that's real and necessary, but joy is also real. Celebration is also real. And when you let your community see that, you celebrate them, not just advocate for them, something shifts. That's how you build a movement, not just a mailing list. Reverend Charles Adams said thank you in a dozen languages to a room full of people who needed to hear it. A Maori leader crossed an ocean and draped a cloak on a man who had spent his life doing hard, necessary, often thankless work and said, "We see you." That's what the best storytelling does. It sees people, it names them, it honors them in a way that makes them feel less alone in this work. That's what I want for every organization that comes through Community Symbol. And honestly, that's what I want for this show. If this one meant something to you, share it. Send it to someone doing the work who needs a reminder of why it matters. And come find us at communitysymbol.com if you're ready to build communications that don't just talk about your community, but actually honor them. That's it for this episode of Talk the Walk. See you next time.